leaders around the world are condemning this Russian invasion.
And joining us now with more insight, Mitchell Wallerstein from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Sir, thanks for being with us here. There have been predictions that Russia could have Ukraine in hand by this weekend. What is your assessment of that timeline, and do you think that Putin will stop there?
Well, this, of course, is the question that has been in everyone's mind. Previously, there was some thought that he was bluffing, or that he would just take the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine. But it's clear now from the evidence that's coming in that this is a multi-front attack coming from the north and from the east and from the south. So it does appear that he is trying to decapitate the Zelensky regime and take the entire country. I think it would be surprising if he were able to accomplish this in the next 24 hours. Apparently, there's much stiffer resistance than than they may have anticipated. So it's going to take a little longer. But the sad fact is that the Russian forces are so far superior to the Ukraine forces that he will ultimately succeed in taking the capital. And then it will likely become a war of attrition.
Mr. Wallerstein, you pretty much told CNN last month, you pretty much predicted what would happen and how it would happen. How were you able to do that, and what did America miss?
Well, I had no particular special insight. I just sort of looking at the facts on the ground. Of course, for months, they've been saying they weren't going to invade, but no one in the U.S. government believed that was true, and that was certainly contradicted by the intelligence evidence. I think the Biden administration has done an extremely competent job in revealing what they knew and calling Putin's bluff. And unfortunately, we're now bearing witness to the reality, which is that, you know, Vladimir Putin wants to try to reassemble as much of the Soviet empire as he possibly can and be remembered for that. So he's going to try to grab Ukraine, and then the concern is, what will he go after next? And it could very well be the states of Georgia in the former Soviet Union and Moldova, and could potentially threaten the Baltic states. However, the Baltic states are part of NATO, so that would up the ante very substantially.
We have learned that 7,000 U.S. service members are going to be deployed to Germany. Can you talk about the NATO response? And the UN is going to have another meeting tomorrow. What do you hope to hear to sort of stop this invasion? Yeah,
of course, the NATO countries are bound by Article 5 of NATO to defend each other in the case of an attack. Ironically, the only time that Article 5 has ever been invoked was after 9/11, when the other NATO countries came to our assistance. All of the NATO countries, I think, will follow the U.S. lead, meaning they will not put their soldiers on the ground in Ukraine. But clearly what's going to happen, and what's already happening, is bolstering defenses in the eastern countries who are members of NATO. So Poland, Slovakia, and the Baltic states, et cetera, are receiving more forces, not just U.S. forces, but other NATO countries. So you'll see a bolstering of the forces, moving missile defenses further east, and being prepared in the event that the Russians decide to turn their focus on some of their former Warsaw Pact countries, like, again, Poland or Hungary. I don't think that's very likely, however. I think even Putin would think that would be overstretching his capabilities.
So this sounds like the start of another Cold War. If so, what are the implications on America and Europe?
Well, that's right. And I think what's likely is we're going to have to spend more of our national treasure to defend our NATO allies from this bully, from this man who clearly has megalomaniacal desires. He wants to rebuild, as I said, the Soviet Empire. So there will be economic costs. In the near term, there will be costs in probably higher gas prices because there will be a ripple effect if the Russians cut off the flow of oil and gas to Europe, the U.S. and other countries in the Middle East and elsewhere will have to come to the assistance of the Europeans. And we've already seen a spike in gas prices as a result here in the United States. Some are predicting we'll see the highest gas prices we've ever seen in the months to come. It really depends on how long this goes on and whether there's any kind of diplomatic off-ramp, whether he can be convinced to stop. But all evidence at this point indicates that he has no intention of stopping until he at least has decapitated the Zelensky regime, taken full control politically of Ukraine.
Mitchell Wallerstein with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Thanks for your time tonight.
My pleasure.